Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us on a gorgeous Thursday. The humidity is starting to break here in Charlottesville in Central Virginia. It's a pleasure to connect with you on this platform. I'm super stoked for today's show. If you watch this program enough, you'll know you know a few things about me. I love great food in Charlottesville. We're lucky to have so many restaurants. I love to drink beer. My wife probably doesn't want me to say this. Maybe 3 to 5 beers a night. So I love beer, and I love supporting Charlottesville. So today's guest, Hunter Smith, I think kind of checks off each of those categories with damn good beer, damn good food, and someone who's doing some big-time things in Charlottesville, Virginia. He will join us in a matter of moments on the program. Let's thank some of the folks that make the program possible. We're an advertising agency at VMV Brands, and one of our favorite clients is Interstate Pest and Service Companies. We're very proud to manage all aspects of their brand, and this company started in 1969 with the first generation of the company. His name was Mr. Robert Wells, and in 1969 he used his personal truck, some sweat equity, and a willingness to take risk. And in 1969, he'd go to his first customer at their home, service them successfully, and then find the closest payphone and say, "May I go to your house now?" Today, Interstate Pest and Service Companies is a Commonwealth-wide company. They have almost 100 employees, 4 generations of family behind them, an office off Harris, right around the corner from Bodo's Bagels, an office in Richmond, and an office in the Shenandoah Valley, and they're crushing it. They are utterly crushing it. And we are so grateful to work alongside this company. We're so grateful to work alongside another of our favorite clients. All our clients are our favorite, let's be honest. Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Whether it's physical therapy, sports medicine, chiropractic care, Dr. Wagner and his team are changing people's lives. They have a block party that we're helping promote on Friday, tomorrow, at their facility. And I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for you to get touched by the Scott Wagner Chiropractic brand and that team, who's just doing amazing things. Corbin Snow, hello. Richard Allen Fox, hello. Roger Voinzay, hello. We have 4 breweries now watching, and if we have 4 breweries watching, that means we must have a brewmaster on the program. Why don't we go to the studio camera, Judah Wickhauer, the director, and let's welcome Hunter Smith to the program. Hunter, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I've totally been super stoked about this. I respect you as an entrepreneur because you have balls and you take risks. I respect you as a beer guy because your beer is damn good.
Thanks.
I respect you as a guy who's passionate about leaving his footprint in Charlottesville better than he first arrived. You're creating jobs. You are taking a chance in Stonefield, which I'm excited about, and we'll spotlight that. I think it's going to be good for Albemarle County. There is a lack of brewery and tap rooms north of town, which I'm sure you know. Before we get to all that, how about we start with the first question? Hunter Smith. Who is Hunter Smith?
I was born here, the old Martha Jefferson, in old Martha Jefferson Hospital in '85. I grew up in Hampton Roads, where my parents conducted their business. When I was going through high school, I went to Northeastern University in Boston out of high school as a musician. Spent the next 5 or 6 years or so working as a musician and bartender. Ended up here when my parents bought Afton Mountain Vineyards back in 2009. Had gotten married about a month before. Rented a house in Belmont, sight unseen for my wife, which was an amazing step of courage for her.
Wow.
Started doing the marketing for Afton and simultaneously was working on the business plan for Champion. So 2 to 3 years in that process, we opened up the taproom in Belmont, and here we are.
I remember when you were at Beer Run, and you were
day.
one of, I was going to say, you must have been their best customer.
I paid the mortgage for a couple of years.
At Beer Run, and you were just literally like trying as much beer as possible. And this is before Champion even started, every day. Put that in perspective. Just talk about the evolution of how you're all right, I'm the marketing director at a vineyard and winery, but I want to open a brewery. I mean, how difficult a transition is that?
There's some similarities for sure. I think I learned a lot, both in the, how tanks and hoses and pumps and those types of things work in the winery, but also I did the sales and deliveries for our self-distribution. So I got to know a handful of folks in the downtown mall restaurant scene by bringing them a couple cases of wine, things like that. So it was a good opportunity for me to get to learn and also learn what the Virginia wine industry was like. And even, just those 10 years ago, it was pretty different than what it is today, especially when it comes to selling Virginia wine. Made a pretty good network, I think, through downtown restaurant folks and just sort of getting my name out there as a 24, 25-year-old at the time. Just getting to meet people, getting to understand how Charlottesville worked. My sister went to Virginia undergrad, and that was most of my understanding of Charlottesville before we moved here. And so I was pleased and sort of surprised to understand exactly how much of the city of Charlottesville, downtown Charlottesville, exists separate from Virginia. I didn't know how I was going to fit into town as a dude that was tattooed punk rock guy growing up and coming from Boston, and was that going to work in what I thought was the sort of bow tie young Republican?
Sure. The Colin Cowherd stereotype, exactly. Where it's like button-down shirt, tie, drinking Zima.
Exactly.
Which, not necessarily true.
Yeah, and
but
not
uncertain though.
Yeah. So I didn't really know where I would get to fit in, and so the food and beverage industry in downtown CVille really kind of was the right fit for me, and felt good. Jordan
Vestry, am I saying his last name right? He goes, best friends. He's giving you props right now.
That's great.
Cheers VA just shared the post. One of the Virginia Beer Facebook pages just shared it. Clayton Cooper, welcome to the program. Give it a like, give it a share. Corbin Snow's got a great question for you. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Sean Bracken, hello. Kyle Irvin from Charlottesville Almore Transit's watching. We have folks watching in 6 states right now,
Nice.
and I think that's a testament to you and your beer. How about the, I'm going to just cut straight to it. How about the balls and the cojones it takes to launch a brewery, man? I mean, that is like not launching, the barrier of entry for launching a brewery is freaking significant.
Yeah, I mean, we found that out firsthand, I guess. So I wrote the business plan while working at the winery. Ever since I was drinking craft beers, Rogue Dead Guy Ale and Arrogant Bastard from Stone and all these sort of pioneer brands, with buddies summers between college years, I'd always thought, like, man, wouldn't it be cool to open a brewery? And one of my buddies was a great home brewer, and I had kind of had a knack, I think, for sort of sales and business sense, and just kind of never really got that idea out of my head. So I was like, how the hell can we do that? And slowly worked together on a business plan. Actually talked to a large national bank here in town for about a year on an SBA loan for a 15-barrel brew house with sort of modest distribution. And that took about a year to get denied.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we had...
So just like red tape.
Yeah. So and some of that comes with a startup trying to get an SBA loan. It's
Sure.
just there's a lot of hoops to jump through. But that's me with the spiral-bound champion business plan, going from one to another, going, who wants to give me a loan? And ultimately, we had to start a lot smaller than that. As a startup, there just wasn't a whole lot of willingness to get a traditional bank loan. And so we started as small as we could. My wife and I, after hearing sort of the last no from the banks, we were touring Asheville, which is another great
Love Asheville.
brewing community.
Yeah.
Hoping to get inspired about this brewery we were going to open, and thinking about, okay, so as we go around Asheville, what are we going to do to be able to open small? And of course, there are lots of small breweries.
Which one inspired you? Burial Brewing Company?
So we opened, I think, right around the same time as Burial. So this would have been maybe a year beforehand.
Okay.
But we were touring Highland, which is
Okay.
a large, big production brewery.
Sure.
But in the corner of the tour that we took, they had sort of a pilot system. It was like, and here's where our brewers try out the fun new recipes that they have in their minds, and we can.
It's like a beta test?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I kind of looked at my wife and was like, hey, we can do that. Like, we can afford to try and start something like that. And so literally went back to the hotel, updated the spreadsheet, came home, and driving over the Belmont Bridge and saw the For Lease sign on the building that the tap room's in now, and walked through it. It was a former Region 10 facility. It's 3,000 square feet. It was like, okay. There wasn't the foot traffic there that there is now, and we got I think a pretty good deal, and I said, okay. So we did all the demo ourselves, pulled up the tile off the floor ourselves, and just did as much as we could to get open for as little as possible. The original business plan had a line item for a brewer. My ambition, although I was a home brewer and I liked the beer that I made at home, I was smart enough to know where I was stupid, which is not having made beer commercially before. So there was a line item in the business plan to hire a brewer, and we'd talked to a few, but when we had to start that small, I was like, cool, so I guess it's me. So for the first year, I brewed everything with the assistance of my brother-in-law, who's still a brewer for us at the Missile Factory, and brewed everything. Would grab a beer from Drew Carroll, who opened the tap room with us, and sit down and pay bills after.
Miss
after
Drew.
5.
Did he move to Nashville?
Drew's in Nashville.
Yeah.
Doing the music
Yeah.
thing, which I admire him for.
Sure.
So that was kind of the first iteration, was get in, brew everything. The original business plan said we were going to make 5 beers. We got in, and that worked for about 2 weeks. We learned quickly that the "what have you done for me lately" thing is where it's at. Rotation nation is what people talk about when they talk about beers on tap, and so. The flipping the Liberty Tax sign out front was, hey, this is our new beer every Friday night with the DJ or whatever it is. It's got to get people in the door. So, I think we brewed over 60 original recipes that first year. Went back to the same bank that we'd spoken to beforehand. Was like, hey, so we're not a startup. We're profitable. We think we made $3,000 our first year, but it was like, okay, we didn't.
You're not losing money.
Right, we didn't blow it.
Right.
And we went
Proof
back,
of concept.
Went back to the same folks for the production brewery loan, and went with a 30-barrel brew house and found that facility we lovingly called the Missile Factory. It's just on the other side of the county line in Woollen Mills.
Yeah.
And sort of away we went.
So you got that loan?
Yep.
Nice.
Same loan, same individual people we talked to the first time.
How long did it take the second time?
It was relatively quick. I mean,
Nice.
we'd fill all the paperwork out, right? So
Right.
it's kind of like update the projections, update the personal financial statement, and off we went. So that's when we entered the broader distribution market. We went with one distributor out of the gate.
Who was that?
That was Hop and Wine Beverage out of
Okay.
Northern Virginia.
Sure.
So they did a great job for us that year of being able to hand sell some of the weird one-off beers, whether it was the Banana Hefeweizen or
Sure.
whatever kind of crazy stuff we were doing. They had a great craft-oriented team that could kind of hand sell those kegs. And to the few accounts we were able to carve a couple kegs off for. So that was I think our initial identity and where I hoped to fit in. I think there were a lot of great breweries already in Virginia at the time, and I think the small piece of the pie that we could get in was like, well, let's do some of the more experimental stuff and a small batch, 3 barrels at a time. It's just basically a handful of kegs. At worst case, nobody likes it, I'll drink it myself.
Sure.
Kind of thing.
Smart.
But then once we got into the production brewing game, it's like, okay, this is more of a create iconic, lasting brands that need to be able to resonate more than just for my buddies and the people that want to come into the Belmont Taproom.
Sure. Hayes Humphreys, welcome to the program. He's the CEO of Devil's Backbone.
I've heard of that guy.
Yeah. Danny is watching from Wild Wolf. Mary's watching. I think every brewery besides Hardywood is on the stream right now.
Hope it don't blow up.
Give it a like, give it a share. If you have a comment that you'd like to relay to Hunter, put it in the comments section of any of the Facebook pages you're watching, and I will relay it to him. Make sure it's, if it has some colorful language, I don't care about that, but let's just make sure it's on topic to what we're covering here. Let me throw this to you here. Laura Fauner, welcome to the program from Dooner's Restaurant. Love you, Laura. How about, so my wife works actively in this business. Our business is 11 years old in May. And where I'm going with this is, being married to an entrepreneur and a business owner can be brutal at times. Because I, probably like you, I work almost every day. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not here, I'm thinking about the business. And if I'm not thinking about the business, I have this in my hand working on the business. Like, I have 2 kids. I have this 11-year-old business, and I have a 17-month-old son. And both need a lot of similar things: nurturing and maturation and care. Food for the business is obviously revenue.
Sure.
How about your better half when you're launching this business? Give us the trials and the tribulations, if you could.
She's a saint.
Yeah, I'd say the same about mine.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand it other than I know how much she loves me because she's still with me.
You're saying you outkicked your coverage?
Yes, by a very long shot. We met in high school.
Oh, wow.
When a much thinner, more attractive man than I am now. So I kind of was able to get with her when maybe we were in somewhat of the same class, but
okay.
Those days are long gone. So very lucky to have been married to Danielle for 10 years, and we've got 2 great kids together, Lincoln, who just turned 6, and Ava, who will be 8 in October. And we basically had a kid each time we had a brewery.
Really?
At least the first 2 times. So
Get out.
She was maybe 16 months, something like that, when we opened the tap room. And then Lincoln, our second, came along right when we opened the production brewery. So both of those things were stressful. Obviously, to have an infant and to have a brewery in its infancy was like, I would strongly advise people not do that. But we got through it. She initially did the books for Champion, and so again, that's being smart enough to know where I'm not the smartest guy. She's a numbers person, was good at math. I'm more of the creative sort of big idea, talk about it person.
Same with us, me and Lauren.
So she did a great job keeping those things in line. And as we grew, of course, between two kids and the growing businesses, we had to create more of a real bona fide finance department inside of Champion. So she's not doing that anymore. She still helps get our web orders and boxes and out on the mail, and so she's helping out every way she can. No, I don't think a serial entrepreneur is an easy person to love.
Right.
I think the only thing that I could say in a positive way about that is that there must be something inherent to that personality that those people like our wives are attracted to, that maybe they work in serious somehow. But yeah, I'm very, very fortunate to have a patient wife who can say, at the same time, like, yep, I'm happy to support whatever you're doing. I also think you're absolutely nuts, and I don't know why you continue to do all these things.
Sounds like a conversation I had this morning.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good to keep humble. Like I said, I've known her since I was 16. So
that's awesome.
Any kind of accolades or attention, she's very quick to remind me that I'm not particularly cool, and
she brings you back to earth.
Keeps me right in my lane, which is great.
That's awesome. Heather Bangley says, "Yes, Danielle Richard Smith is an absolute saint."
Yes, exactly. Anybody that knows that.
Heather also says, "I can't wait to support you guys at your new location." And Hunter, I'm very proud of you. Hayes Humphreys, I'd be curious to know Hunter's thoughts on how the pure taproom model has changed since they opened the original location, and how he sees that opportunity evolving over the next few years. That's a really good question. That was the question I was going to ask. Throw that to you. Why don't we start there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think originally the idea of having a brewery, with Hayes' help, we got Senate Bill 604 passed in 2012, which is the bill that allowed breweries to sell beer by the pint without food sales, and that's effectively what created the business model for Champion to open. I was, like many brewers, daunted by the Department of Health and the idea of selling food, and everyone tells you restaurants are scary and unbankable and unlendable and all these other things. I think there's more of a boogeyman around that than there needs to be, but out of the gate was like, hey, I'm just a beer guy, let's sell beer. So that was very, very beneficial. I think now, to Hayes' point, there's a proliferation of tap rooms, and there was a time, maybe 2012 or a couple years beforehand, where I'm a brewery in the Ascend Industrial Park of whatever city, and people are going to come line out the door for any beer I make. Those days, I think, are over. There's, it's more becoming what I think is cool. It's more the European model of a brewery on every corner. But now you really have to diversify.
Step your game up.
Yeah. Great beer is table stakes. Then it's, beyond that, what makes you special. So thinking that you have a brewery and beer and you're local, so I did it, isn't what it takes anymore. And for us, part of where we were able to be different in downtown was we had some of that outdoor seating that was a fun vibe. Of course, early on we had lots of food trucks. Another dynamic that sort of shifted in those early years was that food trucks became a cool thing to have at weddings. So, we've got obviously this crazy big bustling wedding business around here that you typically think of, flowers and white tablecloth on the table, and that's the only fancy meal option. But then it sort of became cool to have food trucks at weddings, and I think that's very cool. And so between that and the more events that came up around town, it became pretty hard for me to corral food trucks to be at the brewery regularly. If you can get a guarantee to go set up and do one thing, or you can sort of hawk your wares in front of the brewery and see what happens, that if it rains, you're screwed or whatever. We had a hard time keeping food trucks there, and we'd actually have people walk in the door, ask what the food truck was. If the answer was no, turn around and leave without even having a flight or something.
So that's why you started pivoting your model and I got to get some food in this piece.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We're like, look, if people, we could, look at Square and say, okay, I can look at the days where we didn't have a food truck and it's down, several $100s.
Well, it really makes sense because, your beer is so good, but let's take the Missile. The Missile is potent.
Right.
And one of the reasons I like the Missile is because it packs a punch.
Sure.
But if you're drinking a few Missiles and you don't have any food in your belly, you're not going to keep that pace going.
Right.
But if you have a sandwich or you have something that's an absorber in your belly, you could drink more beer.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's one of those things where without food, people come in for a flight, maybe grab a pint of their favorite beer from that flight and move on. And that's a pretty low ticket average and not not a major repeatable revenue driver. And so
we've had some brewery owners here, and Brad Burton, he owns Decipher. He's watching now.
Nice.
One of the co-founders of Decipher, right around from the missile factory.
Yeah.
We've had one brewer say on this show, people come for the beer and stay for the food.
Yep, that's exactly right. I mean, for us, it was, I was working with Will Ritchie at the time, and he and John Bray both got the kitchen at Champion going and did an awesome job of creating something approachable, not expensive. It's just, we want some great tasting food that's not going to, break the budget. Maybe it's not necessarily what people plan to go do for dinner, but when I'm there drinking beer, I want to make sure that I can reliably get something affordable and tasty so I can keep drinking these beers. Because frankly, if they can't, they're going to go somewhere else where they're selling beer and food.
Right.
Right. So we don't want to deliberately shorten the visit by what we have to offer.
A lot of folks watching. Hayes says, I'm on my way to the tree house if you want anything, Hunter. I'm happy to help you here. Lisa Taylor says, you are effing crushing it right now, Hunter Smith. I added the effing. Just throw that in there. Stephen Pippin has a question about distribution to Florida. We will get to that.
Yes.
Kevin Spalding says, I love Champion, bud. Keep up the great work. Give it a like, give it a share. 9 states now watching Hunter Smith on the I Love CVille show. Most of them up in the Mid-Atlantic and down the eastern seaboard, although we have Illinois watching right here. We always have folks outside Chicago.
That's cool.
Let me throw this to you. Do we, as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, do we think that we're at a saturation point in Charlottesville with breweries?
With breweries? I don't think so.
Okay.
I think, Decipher just opened. Obviously, since we've opened.
We've only seen one close, and that was CVille Brewing Company. That's the only one.
That's true, which I think says something about staying power. I think we've got a great resident population that's supporting us day in, day out. Obviously, there's a lot of tourists coming through town, whether it's related to the wine trail or Virginia or graduation or whatever it is. We've got a lot of, so I think we outpunch our weight class when it comes to how many people live here versus how many people come through the brewery. 65% of the credit cards that are swiped at Champion have never been there before. Still,
wow. So that's good for you.
It's good. I mean, I think it tells you how much new traffic there is, and people are still exploring. And I think I hear regularly from folks that either whether it's live on the western side of town or don't get downtown often. There are lots of people I think that live and work in Charlottesville that have still never heard of Champion Brewing Company. So, I think. And that's a regular occurrence that I hear that. And so not only is that a challenge for me to do my job better, but it also tells you there's still growth opportunities. And I think for new brewers, frankly, if people haven't heard of Champion yet, then there's still an opportunity for people to get in and get their names spread out. I think the main thing is, what are you going to do differently? No differently than another barbershop or another restaurant or another hotel or anything. It's, sure, there's demand, but what's going to make someone go to you other than the other guy?
And I think as the consumer of a lot of beer, having more breweries in the marketplace is good for the consumer because it makes you guys grind and put out the best product possible.
Yes.
It's not a situation where there's only a couple of options. So if the product you put out and it's not good, then you continue to give it a try. Now in 2019, you have to put out A+ stuff because there's another option right around the corner.
Right. I think that it's competition is always good for that reason. It keeps us all sharp. If there were one or two of us that got to goof around and make whatever we wanted and it never have to be any good because we got to, blindly support it because we're local. That's one of the drink local things that I think can be a two-edged sword is, we don't want to be blindly supported because we're local. If we can't be held accountable to make quality stuff, we're never going to be able to have any success in Florida because if we just we're all under the umbrella in Charlottesville going, yay, good job, you did it. And then we try to sell beer to someone else. If it's not good and it doesn't click, it's actually not very supportive or it's certainly not a path for longevity. So, I still think there's opportunities for breweries in Charlottesville. I think where you go, what you make, who you are, and who you're targeting, I think, is what's going to be whether you're successful or not. I think if you plop up, pay $25 to $30 a square foot in rent and make 3 IPAs and they're okay, maybe not. But I think if you get in, diversify, and do something special, then yeah, absolutely.
3 Notch in South Street, welcome to the program. Hayes has got a question about hard seltzer. We're going to throw that to you here shortly. Clayton Cooper says, I'm watching in Michigan. Now 14 states watching
Nice.
you on the I Love CVille Show. Jason Krigler, welcome to the program. CVille Hop On Tours guys, welcome to the program. James Sively, welcome to the program. All right, break down the economics. I mean, you are the businessman. We just like to learn about business here. Obviously, your margin is greatest with the beer poured in the tap room.
Yep.
Your margin with beer at the grocery store probably is not that deep, but the
Correct.
volume option, the fact that you can do volume there is where you're going to make your money. Then you also have the branding aspect that comes with the beer in the grocery store, like a Wegmans or a Teeter, whatever it may be. The beer that's distributed to potentially a restaurant, there's the cost to distribute. The restaurant needs to take its cut, and the restaurant can't price it too high or they won't sell. So there's probably not a ton of margin in beer being sold to restaurants here. Break us through the economics of the business model here.
Sure. So the tap room, or what people call the own premise model, is probably the largest growing one in the country. It's certainly the most profitable for us. You've got over 7,000 breweries in the country, and I'd say, at least, I'm not the economist, but I think at least 60% of those are selling beer at their brewery directly to people. Obviously, when you take raw materials and labor costs and turn it into full retail price, that's where you're going to have the most margin to absorb, and it's also a great opportunity to be able to, see the brewers, see the grains, see where things are made, and really touch the brand at a very personal aspect. So I think that's the best part of the tap room, is really getting to get in and really absorb the identity of the business. But then, also of course the margins there are best. When you get into the distribution game, it's a whole different animal, and that is all about volume. And so, chain access is one of the things that is more difficult as the industry tightens.
What do you mean by that?
So when you go to Food Line, for example, or Harris Teeter, and you see the craft beer aisle, fortunately for several years, those have been expanding. But at some point, they're not going to blow down the walls and make a bigger store. The beer shelf is the beer shelf. So if you want to come in and get on that beer shelf, you basically have to pick what you're going to replace. Convince not only a distributor to carry you, but then convince that distributor that they need to talk to the corporate buyer at Kroger or Whole Foods or whoever.
Because this beer will sell more than that beer.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you pay for shelf space?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. It's not slotting. It's called slotting, or charging slotting fees. It's not legal.
Okay.
So we can't do that.
It's not legal with beer or booze?
It's not legal.
Okay.
Right? So
Got it.
So really, there's not even that opportunity, which is good, because for a small business like us, we can't play the credit card race.
Sure.
We can't try to keep up.
First, like a Sierra Nevada.
Right. We can't. Obviously, there's no way to do that. But fortunately, the free market does what it does, and people who like this beer more sell more of that, and then it keeps its spot. But getting through that door is definitely initial challenge. A lot of those decisions are made 6 months to a year in advance as far as what beer is going to go in there. So not only do you have to have that conversation that much in advance, but you have to know what you're going to make. For example, Clay Cooper, who's watching from Michigan, he's our director of sales. We're meeting tomorrow with our sales team to talk about what we're making next year, because we need to be communicating that to our distributors and our chain retail partners.
So you're forecasting
now.
2020 in August of 2019.
Yep. So those decisions are final. Like the beers we're making next year, the labels that are designed for them, all of those things, that's already done. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Just yesterday brewed Santa's Cookies, our holiday stout release. That was brewed, yesterday when it was, 98 degrees or whatever unforgiving thing it was. So that's just a much longer tail and sort of a whole different animal than what I started doing. Was let's brew this beer, put it in a keg, put it on tap, sell it to the customer, rinse, repeat. It's a much longer game and a much more patient and capital-intensive game that comes into the wholesale market. And so typically the way that a lot of people look at it is that on-premise, or the restaurant placement, is sort of the marketing piece. So, you go to the Whiskey Jar, you see Missile IPA, you have it for dinner, you have it when drinking with buddies.
So you're saying you're not making much there?
It's comparable margin to the off-premise sale, but It's not the same thing. We're not making much money. There's a volume discount that applies to the keg, for example. So you're going to make more money on that first pint at the brewery. You're going to make a little less when you're selling a 6-pack, and you're going to make the least when you're selling a half-barrel keg, because it's the most beer. So the volume discount goes accordingly. So, but there's the marketing aspect of when people are out and enjoying restaurants, they have
see it
that
on the
beer,
menu.
makes the impression, man, I love that beer. Next time I'm shopping with the kids at Harris Teeter, I grab a 6-pack. and that's kind of how those two channels help support each other.
Cool. Mitchell Barons, Prime 109, and Lampo, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. Give it a like and a share. If you have a comment or question you want to relay to Hunter, I'm happy to do that. We have someone now watching Chase Dipple.
Yep.
In California.
Nice.
He says, "Stinking in My IPA is a great beer. Cheers from California, Hunter. You're doing a great job."
Awesome.
Cody Hines, Lisa Taylor, Jay Emery, Josh Skinner, hello. Chris Turner, hello. Grace Australia, and Richmond, hello. How about the model of tap rooms and strategically placed markets to grow revenue? We've seen that with Champion.
Yep.
We've seen that with Three Notch. Mm-hmm. We see this with a number of breweries as they try to go from local to, say, regional. Mm-hmm. Start open-ended, and then I've got some questions for you.
Sure. So that's, sort of like I mentioned earlier, the ability to sort of get in and experience the brand in a local touchstone, I think, is great. So people can come in, meet the staff, see how they're connected to the brand, see the brewing operations, and sort of really get to understand the brand in a way that, walking past a six-pack on a shelf is never going to bring you. So
sure.
I think there's a lot of value in that model to sort of get in and support new distribution areas, so it's not just...
And it's your highest margin revenue stream.
Right. So it doesn't hurt to do that in the process, but also I think most importantly it's about giving distributor teams a place to get educated on the brand. Mm-hmm. It's more than an 8x11 PDF that I email you and say, hey, here's everything you need to know about shower beer. Of course, if you come into the brewery and have 3 or 4 with your sales team, it's going to make a big difference. And so
sure.
I think that's some of the operational strengths there.
You started in Richmond, right? With
Yep.
a tap room by the Gather Spot. Did you close it?
Yep. So that'll close at the end of this month.
Okay. So walk us through the mechanics of the Richmond market opening. I mean, Richmond Scott's Edition is flooded.
Yes.
With breweries. I don't want to assume here, so that's why I'm asking the question. You're thinking workspace with Gather, where it's people can come here to work. They're entrepreneurs, whether it's by the hour, by the day, whatever it may be, and they have an opportunity for a brewery right here. So you have a built-in kind of customer base here. You also knew that Richmond was a passionate beer market.
Yep.
And then within 60 minutes or so of where you are, your home base, so it's an opportunity for you to manage it easier than, say, something in Northern Virginia or North Carolina or whatever
Sure.
it may be.
Yeah,
Throw
absolutely.
that to you.
Yeah. So that was a great opportunity. Richmond's been one of our most supportive markets since day one, especially when we were very early with a lot of the cool sort of one-off kegs here and there. And then there was an opportunity that came to us through Jason Alley, who has Comfort Restaurant and at the time had Pasture.
Pasture, sure.
I was a big fan, and we looked
Me
at
too.
this beautiful old bank building on Gray Street. Fell in love with the space and the idea of working with Jason on food, and wanted to get in there and take the opportunity to support Loveland at the time, who was our new distribution partner, and really try to make an impact on Richmond. But knowing that these opportunities come up and we're always working on new distribution markets, wanted to keep it to a relatively tight lease to sort of know that if we love it, great, but if not, we need to be able to move on. And so one thing we learned through that space, we went from a 3,000 square foot tap room in Charlottesville, where half of it's dedicated to brewing, to a 6,000 square foot tap room with 20-foot ceilings and a relatively small brewing operation.
Probably much higher rent too, right?
Much higher rent, but it's
Yeah.
also hard to fill. I mean, we had an Iron Reagan metal show there with over 300 people, and you could still walk around pretty comfortably.
Wow.
Obviously, that's not the case here in Charlottesville.
Sure.
So I think one thing we learned through that is that you don't necessarily need a big-ass space, although it's easy to fall in love with one, to make that impression on the customer, but also that dedicated parking and outdoor seating are really important parts of what we've got going on here that we want to look for sort of any new stuff we do.
Nice, good
So,
analysis
yeah.
there. So I respect that about you. So we launched this, we own most of this building here, and we wanted to take this space and turn it into a welcome center for Charlottesville. Because I was analyzing the market and I said, downtown, the welcome center for Charlottesville is in a bus station. There's 8 hammered hobos that are hanging outside the welcome center and the bus station, and they're using a part-time employee who's usually older in age to be the greeter at the welcome station. And
Sure.
I'm like, I can beat the city at their model and make this a welcome center. I realized very quickly, 6 months in, that having a welcome station, you need to be open till like 9:30 or 10 o'clock on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. It's hard to find staffing for
Sure.
that. The next thing is the folks who are coming in off the street all the time, just asking us, where is a restaurant?
Sure.
Where is the concert? People, just basic questions. And our staff that we were paying a lot of money to should not be answering for 20 minutes. Like, there's the pavilion, there's that. It was distracting them from the work that was making the real money.
Sure.
So then we pivoted the model away from the Welcome Center and made it into a studio, and then that went gangbusters. So where I'm going with this is, like, I have so much respect for entrepreneurs who are willing to take a risk, say, this isn't working with the model, and pull the string. Because a lot of people in the ubiquitous nature of iPhones and social media are fearful to, like, say, I have to close this or this isn't working.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
And
it's never
that
fun.
takes balls.
Yeah, I mean, it's never fun. It's not romantic. It's not exciting. And obviously, there's people who've put a lot of work and time into making that happen. And so when it doesn't work, there's heartache. But you also have to be realistic. And I've got plenty of friends and have heard plenty of stories of folks that sort of go, double, triple, quarter down on something that's not necessarily working, and you have to, have the wherewithal to say, hey, that was awesome, and we had accomplished a lot of what we set out to accomplish, but there's also other opportunities, and we're going to pursue those. And sort of right around the same time, we were having this conversation of, do we want to renew the lease in Richmond or not, which was, the option was a 5-year lease, so we were there for 3. Our option was for 5, so do we want to go on for longer than we've been there already? But we're also almost constantly approached with opportunities here in town that are close to where we live and work already.
Yeah.
Where we've got a sort of network and hub of Champion employees that are able to leverage that local infrastructure into making some other plays a little easier here. And one of those conversations was the opportunity at Stonefield.
Respect, man. Scott Roth, welcome to the program, president at 3 Notch. I think every brewery in Charlottesville is watching, minus Hardywood right now. Let's talk about it. I mean, I'm so pumped for your move to Stonefield. It's Reason Beer is really the only other taproom option,
Yep.
kind of north of town and in that part of Albemarle County. I think you're going to crush it there.
Thanks.
I think you are, and I'm going to say this because I know the Stonefield folks are trying to come on the show, and why the Stonefield folks are trying to come on the show is to try to debunk the stigma of really high rents. I'm going to straight up say this. Stonefield needs Champion more than Champion needs Stonefield. And you guys need to throw him an effing deal with the red because you have a cool brand. You're not like corporate chain like Stonefield is. I mean, pretty much all corporate chains there, retail, and a lot of the restaurants as well. You have a brand that's localized, personalized, and humanized. You built it here in Charlottesville. People love your beer, and I think you're going to attract thousands and thousands of customers to Stonefield that will then support the shopping center because the shopping center needs some support right now. I think that's fair to say, right?
I think so.
I think that's very fair to say. So I'm going to throw the entire topic to you, respect on this move, and I think you're going to crush it there.
Yeah, so the opportunity came through us through the leasing agency who we talked to actually about other. We had initially talked to them about other opportunities outside of Virginia.
Wow.
And yeah, which was kind of funny that they said, hey, we've got this opportunity in Charlottesville.
This is O'Connor Capital out of New York?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So they brought this opportunity to us. When I realized it was Rocksalt, of course, that set off a bit of a light bulb. I'd always been a fan of the restaurant. Very good friends with Travis Croxton, who owns Rappahannock. Yeah, it was a phenomenal oyster company, and loved the restaurant. And they were ready to move on. And it's a great space. It's pretty much ready to go. And I thought there'd be a great opportunity for us to approach people not only on the western side of town, but also coming from the 29 corridor and all of what I think there's opportunity for sort of critical mass at that center. I think you're right that in the eyes of some people, or most people in downtown Charlottesville, that doesn't necessarily feel like Charlottesville, but the reality is it's just minutes from town, and a lot of people go through that area. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities. Obviously, we're a sponsor of Virginia Athletics, and I think with the number of games that go on at JPJ, the inherent traffic in that part of town, it's a good opportunity. So I'm really excited to do something cool in the space.
Full service restaurant.
So it'll be more of a quick service, counter service style restaurant.
Okay, so is full service the right moniker?
Not necessarily. I think it'll be full service. Obviously, we'll have full bar, food, et cetera, but not so much table service. So
understood.
Part of what we've found to be successful at the Champion Taproom in Belmont is the ability to sort of walk up, order what you want, take a table, keep it simple.
And you don't have the overhead of carrying waitstaff.
Right. You don't have wait staff, and for the consumer, you're not feeling, there's no fuse telling you, hey, it's time to turn this table and move on. Can I bring you anything else or your check or things like that? And I think that sort of casual approach to being able to come in just order what you want when you need it. So that's the approach we're taking there. We've seen success with that here in CVille, and so, but we will have full bar, full kitchen service, and
will you brew beer there?
We will do some brewing there.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Richard Griggs says, we love Champion in North Carolina. New Jersey is now watching the program, as is Long Island, as is folks outside New York City. My DMs are coming in very quickly for questions with Hunter. I'm going to try to get to all these questions here. I have a lot that I want to talk to him about. So how do you, I said this would probably be the toughest question that I throw to you. 1, 3, 5-year goals. Like, what's Champion look like, say, in 2025?
Wow. That's funny. That sounds like the future. Obviously.
I can't even see as a business owner. I'm trying to see past like next week.
Yeah, I'm like, it's almost September.
Right.
But fortunately, with being in a distribution business, it does help to think a little bit farther out. I think we've got parallel tracks for growth, right? So we've got the existing investment into infrastructure and sales that we've got on the production brewery. So we're going to continue to leverage that and grow that through additional states of distribution. We've been growing strategically right now in the Midwest and the Southeast. I think we'll continue to sort of paint those territories in as we have, again, sort of critical mass there, bordering states and things like that. When also there are strategic opportunities here and there. And then also continue to grow the retail portfolio. I think we've really enjoyed getting to get that face-to-face interaction with the consumer, selling the beer and having food sales to support that. And so I think those parallel tracks go, okay, if we're in 12 states by the end of this year, which is where we'll be, I'd say let's call that 2025 over the next 5 years.
Good for you.
And maybe another, 5 to 10 retail opportunities if I had to. If you made me throw a dart and hit that number on a board, I'd say that's probably where we land. Lauren
wants to know when you're going to open in Stonefield. I can't wait to go and visit you guys.
That's a great question. So we'll be there in November is when the premises is delivered to us. And then so either late November, early December. So probably post-Thanksgiving would be my guess.
You're getting a lot of questions coming in, guys. If you put questions on the feed, we will get to as many as possible. I'm going to get to these coming in on Twitter and the DMs on IG as well here shortly. John, is it Laudicio? John Laudicio, is that your buddy?
Yes.
He says
Johnny Cheeseburger to the people.
Johnny Cheeseburger. I like that name, Johnny Cheeseburger. What marketing channels receive most of Champion's budget? Johnny Cheeseburger wants to know.
It's a great question. Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, you crush it on Facebook, dude.
Thanks. Jason Okusa, who's also our
He's watching. He just did a hand emoji.
Of course he did. Yeah. He's not only our director of packaging and cellaring at the production brewery, but also in charge of our social media. Does an awesome job with that. So
it seems like craft beer, and we're an advertising agency. Alex Tiscornia, welcome to the show. A lot of effing people watching right now. Seems like a strong craft brewery, and what any brewery does, the beer's got to be good, but it's also a lot of it is branding.
Absolutely.
And building. Talk to me about that, the strategy.
And that was, in addition to drinking beer and how much I love beer, that was part of what was always really cool to me in the beer business and wine business too, is that you have so many opportunities for branding and so many different ways to create an evocative response out of the consumer. So it's whether creating a lifestyle brand or getting a laugh out of the consumer with a goofy name on the tap list, or maybe something meaningful when you make a beer for someone's wedding, things like that. There's so many opportunities to sort of cleverly brand things in a way that they resonate with people. I think as someone who started as a songwriter and then became a marketing and business major, I think reaching the consumer in a way that matters to them and has a meaningful impact on them.
You're basically saying you know how to make human connection.
I hope so.
With people in the marketplace.
I hope
you
so.
Totally do.
It's funny because I consider myself an introvert and I'm not always great at that type of interaction, but I think strategically and from a skill set, that's what we like to do, and that's from a personal brand and also for Champion perspective, I think that's the glory of that social media is that you really have an opportunity to
tell a story.
Yeah, tell a story, expose yourself, and get to know people that through a channel that you could never access all of that face to face.
Elizabeth Cox Cromwell, president of the Chamber of Commerce, watching the program now. Maggie Slickman, thank you kindly for joining us. 18 states watching Hunter Smith here on the I Love CVille Show. Mo Covington, your boy, Champion is going to crush it in Stonefield. I would be remiss not to ask about the scuttlebutt I'm hearing with you and Covington. Got something coming down the pipe? Do you want to release that now?
Nah, Mo and I are great buddies. We've gotten to know each other through the Chris Long Foundation.
Yeah,
and,
he's a great dude. He's come on the show.
That's right. That's right. So Mo and I are working together on something that we're really looking forward to talking more about later in the year.
Okay.
But another sort of fun consumer product. I'll give you that.
Fantastic. We'll leave it at that. I love, talk to us about the strategy about picking your first space in taproom. In retrospect, it was like so brilliant. You got like this tap room that is like embodies so many like it's personified so many different ways. I mean, it's kind of like a little dingy. It's a little dark. It's got this great outdoor space for music and people to chill at. It's close to downtown.
Yeah.
It's got parking. It was like small at first, so like in the early years, you were like in there. You felt kind of like, oh, I'm like ahead of like the market, and I'm at a place that most people don't know about.
Totally.
Like a novelty to it. I really think that like that space. Very important to like the success of Champion in a lot of ways.
Absolutely critical. I mean, I'm not just in being the first place that we opened, but there's something special about that place.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that a lot of our staff, brewers, sales alike, call it a day and go grab a couple beers at the brewery. Most people don't choose to hang out at work after work. There's something special about that place that even for me is hard to leave, and my wife can attest to that. It's a special spot, man. I mean, it's funny when we first went in there. I had a considerably smaller network at the time, but even the friends that I had were like, "Are you sure? It's not downtown. It's not really close to anything. It's not in downtown Belmont." I was like, "I don't know. I think we'll figure it out." I mean, people drive 40 minutes outside of, industrial areas to go to something in the, ass end of a warehouse, like I said earlier, or, an hour into Vermont and to go to Hill Farmstead, and obviously, very different animals there. But I think the point being that. People will go to a brewery and check it out, and now, of course, it seems intuitive. But, part of that, too, is having the flexibility and understanding that your customers will tell you who you are and what you're supposed to be. And, we originally opened up, and you could bring 5 people in there, feel pretty busy. And that was kind of what we did. I mean, it was like our friends would come and bring a handful of people. And that's part of what's fun about being a business in Charlottesville is so much traffic is word of mouth. And so it's like... customer service is critical for exact the same reason because people tell 1 people what they liked about something and 13 people what they didn't like about something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think having that small space to feel intimate, connect with people. Obviously, there's the big glass see-through to the brewery there, so you can kind of see folks working. It happened to be the right place at the right time to take that office on, and that was very much a hands-on project for myself and my brother-in-law and Drew and my wife. And ever since, we still have folks that from other breweries out of state that visit and go, man, that place is really cool. And that makes me feel special because I think of it as just sort of our humble little pub tucked away off the mall in Charlottesville. But the other thing that's special is that the patio now was originally a parking lot. And so people would drive in and it was like 12 parking spaces. But then people would take a beer and then go like sit on the hood of their car. Like, I don't think we need to have the parking lot so much as we need to have a patio. And, as a small family business that's been sort of self-capitalized, it's, just put every little dollar back in at a time. And okay, let's get some picnic tables. And okay, let's, rent a tent from Skyline. Let's get a PA for shows. Like little by little, we've been able to turn it into what it is. And what it is now is a quote I attribute to Sean at Full Steam Brewery. He said, we're kind of like a community center with a brewery in it. And
Love that.
When I heard him say that, it really stuck with me because I think that's what we become, and I'm proud to say that we don't have ownership of that space so much as the community does. Lots of different nonprofit organizations, political campaigns, birthdays, weddings, etc. That have several friends that have gotten to know each other and end up married through that place, and that's way more special to me than whatever margin we may take down from the beer that we sell. That it's I think it means something to people in the community, and that means more to me than anything else.
Great answer right there. Give it a like and a share on any of the channels that you're watching. You're getting a lot of likes on that answer right there.
Nice.
How about this question? You are a social entrepreneur, and like us, you got to keep the business in the black to keep giving your employees raises. One of the most proud moments we had was this guy who's been with us for 7 years buying a house. So proud
Nice.
of him buying a house. And that's Judah, our director. As business owners, we got to keep driving revenue, but we do it in a way where we can then give back to the community because we are making money, and that's what you embody too. Your thoughts on the Charlottesville ecosystem? Post 8/12, 2009. I mean, a lot of folks, were heavily invested. You and I downtown.
Sure.
A lot of folks concerned what's happening in City Hall.
Sure.
And the direction that we're heading. Open-ended question on that.
It's a big open-ended question. I think we're in a good spot. I think that we went through something truly awful that nobody wanted or deserved back in 2017, and I think the silver lining has been that in many ways it's brought the community together. I think we know our neighbors a lot better than we used to. I think a lot of people understand institutional white supremacy a lot better than they used to. I think there are a lot of comfort zones that have been broken down, and of course we've got a collective trauma to deal with, but I think that a lot of people have been had their lives changed for the better on a very slow curve by virtue of what we've had to do as far as the reconciliation process goes. We've got a long way to go. I think it's going to be a long time till Charlottesville is not, hashtag Charlottesville for better or worse. I have business considerations when it comes to the tourism and messaging and Google image results of Charlottesville, but I think we all have to be realistic about.
Me too. I love CVille.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you understand. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's the sort of crass business aspect of that, but there's also the really important community aspect. And for me, and I guess this ties a little bit to what I was saying about the tap room and the community, is that for me, community kind of comes first. And I think when we are able to respect our neighbor, understand the considerations that folks of all walks of life have and experience in Charlottesville, then we actually will have a much stronger community. And my secondary concern to that is a strong community will support its local businesses. And I think that by focusing on the people that live and work here first, whether it's through supporting local nonprofits or employing people or just being friendly, walking down the downtown mall, any of those efforts that we can conduct, I think, ultimately have an impact on the local businesses in Charlottesville. And so by learning more about what it's like to live and work in Charlottesville for other people, I think we all ultimately improve the ecosystem here. There's been fallout. There have been some interviews that were given that weren't my favorite. I think, there's been a lot of people looking to sort of capitalize on what Charlottesville is and means. And, for example, we just went and rolled out distribution in Florida. So I spent the night in Gainesville.
Ooh, how is Charlottesville seen in Gainesville?
So that's the thing. I mean, I used to have to explain where Charlottesville, Virginia was.
Now you don't.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
So I think the more that we can work in our community, the more that we can tell sort of a healed or reconciled story, whether it's 3, 5, 10 years from now, then we can really explain what Charlottesville's about and kind of do that work quietly now in the community. And hopefully it's an opportunity to sort of own the story of a town with a lot of latent issues that had them brought to light in the worst way possible. But then we got our hands dirty as a community and did some healing where we could.
Great answer. Did you see a dip in sales?
Major.
Yeah. All of us.
Yeah. I mean, August is not a great month downtown anyway.
Right.
It's hot. People go on vacation.
Right.
Students aren't back. We were down $15,000, $20,000 for those first couple of months. It's serious. At the same time, it wasn't everybody's first focus. It's like, shit, we've got something we've got to deal with here. But yeah, there is the obvious paying employees, paying the rent.
I don't think
those implications.
And
sure.
a lot of folks don't realize from like small business ownership, having like that dip, the revenue sustains the business, and hiccups like that aren't forecasted. So like you have to scramble and pivot and like make things happen at those times, which I respect. I mean, I certainly similar for us. How about this? And change the topic. Who is doing locally craft beer really well from your standpoint, besides Champion?
Besides Champion,
Yeah.
Most guys, honestly.
That was a safe answer.
I'll give you a specific answer.
Okay.
I just tried the mixed IPA 12-pack from Star Hill.
Okay.
It's like their new IPA variety pack.
Uh-huh.
All 4 of them were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Star Hill was one of those brands that we got going that I think was more of the stoic, had made more traditional styles that we were maybe the foil to originally. So it's kind of cool to come around full circle and make friends with those guys, and then now in 2019 see them doing really cool, innovative brewing and packaging and stuff like that.
What do you think about them at Dairy Central?
think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love the idea that more
Rising tide, good for all ships.
Yeah, exactly. More well-known and quality producers in town makes there more of a reason for people to come into Charlottesville and drink beer here. And nobody goes to a new brewery town and goes to one.
Well said.
I didn't go to, you don't go to Asheville to be like, cool, I went to Week of Weed and turned around and left.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
Do you? What is it gonna take for Charlottesville to become Asheville?
Well, I don't have a perfect answer for that. I don't know what it costs to do business in Nashville. I know that they've got a lot of sort of natural synergies like we do when it comes to tourism, reasons to visit, colleges,
outdoors,
things like that.
colleges.
Outdoors. I think it's going to take growing the facilities that are available to folks to put in breweries. I mean, our production breweries in the county, it was literally the last warehouse I looked at. It was like the last option that we had that was even remotely affordable. I couldn't tell you where there's more warehouse space available in Charlottesville now. Maybe there is. And there's not much that, any one cottage industry like ours can do to influence land values, and inherently in Charlottesville, they're going up. So how do we become Asheville? I think we would have to geographically grow to be a bigger space like Asheville is. And I think if you think about towns outside of Asheville where Sierra Nevada, New Belgium, and other breweries are that are still considered Greater Asheville, I think that's how you would have to describe Charlottesville in order for us to have that kind of impact. So if you think about
so you're saying like Green or Fluvanna or something like that.
Yeah, or if you think about Devil's Backbone and Brewers on 151 as being sort of Greater Charlottesville, and I think most people do when you're going to make a Charlottesville weekend trip, you don't look at, Blue Mountain's 20 minutes from Charlottesville.
Sure.
I'm not going to go.
Right.
Obviously, we're all kind of in the same region. So I think it'll kind of be coloring in those positions between the scenic trails like 151 and downtown. The spots in between is where we'll have to grow into Crozet, Ivy, Stonefield, 29 North, places east of town. I think going to the less obvious, like super condensed areas is where we'll probably be able to grow.
Bill Chapman, owner of CVille Weekly in Oakhurst, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. Give it a like and a share on any of the channels you're watching. You still have a lot of effing people watching right now. Throw this to you. Charlottesville, Virginia. Love Charlottesville. I know you love Charlottesville as well. What do we see from a Charlottesville standpoint over the next few years? UVA is going to continue to expand.
Obviously, yep.
UVA is huge for us, and that it really helps insulate the economy. We have some major employers in CFA and State Farm, 2 hospitals. We have a downtown scene that is, it needs a little bit more TLC. We have housing prices that are going up astronomically. I'm torn on this. As an owner of real estate, I like it. As someone that is concerned about Charlottesville and a kid that's going to be growing up here in Charlottesville, I worry.
Sure.
How do you see Charlottesville's evolution here?
I mean, I think, the way I think about it, both from a development perspective and as a local business person, is it's going to continue to grow like crazy whether we like it or not. So I think it's sort of, and that's where I had initially taken interest in zoning and joining the planning commission.
Yeah, you were on the planning commission.
Briefly.
Yeah.
And Champion kind of pulled me back away from that. And that's
a thankless job, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's work I really enjoyed and I'd like to get back to when less than 80 hours a week is what I'm working.
Sure. Right.
And that is a real time commitment too. But anyway, I think seeing how we grow and just trying to use the tools that we have like zoning and others to grow mindfully so that we don't just go absolutely off the rails and everything's gray brick, looks like shit, and we're surrounded all of a sudden.
Fredericksburg.
Yeah, a little town that's a big town that went from being precious and awesome and something everybody loves to I don't even know where we are anymore.
Right.
So I think mindful development is the key thing. I think we've got to get a little out of our comfort zones when it comes to what types of development are allowed in what types of neighborhoods. What
do you mean? You say more density?
More density and more different types of use. I mean, if you look at the zoning map, like the 4 big, traditionally single family white neighborhoods keep looking like that every time the comp plan comes back. So I think we need to look at multifamily, multi-story types of uses in neighborhoods that they're not usually in.
Need ADUs.
Yeah, exactly. Interested to see how the SIA comes together and how the vertical development goes above IX. I mean, I think that's one thing that that tends to be a catch-22 when people think about what it's like to live and work in Charlottesville, which is it's this beautiful small town with scenic surroundings. Also, we need affordable housing. I see that there tends to be a reticence to build vertically and lose some of that viewscape, but that's the only place that we're going to get.
That's all we have left.
There's no found land, right? Like you can't stick another 2-acre campus inside of Charlottesville. So what do we have? Vertical growth. And I think that's where it's going to come from. And I think we're going to have to sort of come to grips with, like, if we want affordable housing in Charlottesville, if we don't want it all to become suburban sprawl, then Charlottesville, which is a city,
10.27 square miles.
it's going to
very tiny.
It's going to end up looking like a city.
Yeah.
So if we want it to be a city that everyone can end up living in, it's going to look like a city, or else it will be one large suburban area. I'm hoping that it's more of the former than the latter, but it's not really up to me.
You effing crushed it today.
Thanks.
An hour and 3 minutes.
Thanks.
Easy peasy.
for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you. He is opening later this year.
Yep.
In Stonefield. Support that place. Support local breweries. Support folks that are creating jobs and are committed to doing well by Charlottesville. I think Hunter Smith is certainly one of those guys. We're going to take this show and we'll archive it on ilovecville.com. We will also turn it into a podcast on iTunes. We'll do both by close of business today.
Nice.
And for the next 3 weeks, we will syndicate this show across the I Love CVille network. 17 Facebook pages, 17 Twitter accounts, the third largest Instagram in the community, a daily e-newsletter that goes out to 108,000 inboxes, and a podcast that we're really driving people to. Thank you to Hunter, and please support Champion and the local small business owners here in Charlottesville. We close the show the same way every time, and we ask you guys to embody the golden rule. We don't make it about religion. We do make it about treating other people how you want to be treated yourself. It's a very straightforward concept. I still think it's lost, and Charlottesville needs the golden rule more than ever. The Commonwealth does. The country certainly needs the golden rule more than ever. We've turned I Love CVille into a network, and on Thursdays at 3 o'clock, which is in an hour and 28 minutes, we have a charity-focused show on Thursdays, and that's going to be Caring for Creatures. Central Virginia's first no-kill animal sanctuary is going to be in the spotlight in roughly 90 minutes. Tomorrow at 10:15, Real Talk, 10:15 in the morning, Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate. We spotlight real estate and planning and zoning in the community with people that are insiders in planning, real estate, and zoning. That's tomorrow at 10:15, and then live music on the I Love CVille show tomorrow at 12:30. We'll see you guys in roughly 90 minutes. Have a good afternoon. Good work.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Yeah, seriously. It was very, very enjoyable. One thing we got to do is we're going to take the hero picture. This is how we package everything together. Judah is